Hey y'all, I am Victory. I help provide insight to empower, and today I wanted to walk you through how I process and unpack my traumas, my traumatic memories, and experiences that I've had in my life. So today I'm going to take you through, let's say, racial. Well, that was the original one. So I had this experience at a Denny's very early in childhood. I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, around 5 years old, and I went. Yeah, my family and I, my three older sisters, my parents and I, were traveling from Chicago to Mexico as we usually did, uh, and we stopped to eat, as you do, and so my parents went to park the car, and my sisters and I went into the Denny's to try and get us a table. My parents were like, "Hey, we're gonna park. Go get us a table. We'll be right in." So we were uh, we went into like the little waiting area and waited to be seated. And looking back now, I'm wondering if they just didn't want to seat us because we didn't have any parents with us. But in the moment, it was very strange and awkward and concerning, right? We want to ID the emotions that happened in the OI, the original incident, where we felt disconnected from safety, traumatized. Uh, I'll get to this part in a second. So we're at this Denny's and we're waiting, and it feels like a really, really long time. Like an oddly long time. It was probably like 5 minutes or something. I think our parents might have gotten caught up in conversation in the car or something. Um, but we're waiting, and there's the lady who is seating people, the hostess, or just one of the waitresses, and she looks at us, and we look at her, and there's expectation in the air, right? We expect to be seated, and she's not doing that. She's kind of just looking at us weird and confused, and for like, I'm 33, so like 28 years of my life I've been thinking, oh, they didn't want to seat us because we're people of color, we're Mexican. And the way, yeah, because eventually my parents did come in, and they still wouldn't seat us, and so we had to go across the street to a Waffle House, go Waffle House. Um, so it did end up being a racial issue, and there were more there were more to come. It's strange driving through the South, um, but in that moment, that however long it was, there were a lot of emotions that were coming up that I didn't know how to deal with. I didn't know how to process them. And that's not really, we'll get to that, like Denny's part two. There wasn't a whole lot of guidance in sitting down with my emotions, with how to process them, how to deal with them. Now that was one part of this. That was the original incident, the OI, where the disconnection from safety isn't just that I'm in harm's way, or that it was an embedding, an inception of shame, right? I am not allowed, let's say in that moment, I am not allowed to have a very basic need met, a place to stop, to eat, and to enjoy the presence of my family, as restaurants allow, because of something about myself that I was simply born into, right? The color of my skin, my facial features, my general appearance. Yeah, general appearance that I can't change or wouldn't even really want to. So because of that, there was something wrong with me. Someone else presented an idea that I didn't know I had internalized, right? They presented the idea, you can't eat here, we don't serve you because of this thing about you. This thing about you is wrong. And so moving forward, there's that, like, I picture it like a rock or like a knapsack, like something to throw over your shoulder, maybe like a chip on the shoulder, but picture like a rock, and I just put that in the backpack. Part of why we're here is to take those out, say, oh, this is not mine, this was yours. Here you go, right back at you. I actually don't need to feel ashamed about such things. So there's that original experience. Now, later on, it was just me and my dad, and we were traveling. This was after. We were traveling to, I think, Mexico, or someplace in Texas. He was meeting up with his friend Rudy, I remember his name. And he said, we're gonna stop by Denny's and like meet up with him there. And internally, I started freaking out. My nervous system was going crazy. And I just, like, all I could verbalize was no. Like, no, I want to eat somewhere else. I want to eat somewhere else. Like, I don't want to go there. And my dad was like, providing, kind of eliciting guilt and that same shame experience. Guilt because I really loved my dad and looked up to him when I was at that age. And I didn't want to disappoint him. I didn't want to go against him. But at the same time, I'm feeling very unsafe in that moment. So this is kind of where we're talking about unpacking emotions here, IDing them at the very least. Here is one that I've faced personally in my life, and that says apathy. I don't know if you can see that. Apathy. Over here was, let's say, confusion, anxiety, and I want to put distress. So I liken this to holding on to a poop. If you've never heard of this, I've heard this a few times by different doctors, but at around age 30, everybody should have their colon cleansed because of how much poop doesn't get pooped out. There's still like residual fecal matter left in our intestines that our body starts to accumulate over the years. So it's like shit that we're holding on to. And it's the same thing if you've ever read The Body Keeps the Score, or if you've ever heard of it, I highly recommend it. But it's basically how the body holds on to traumatic emotions, events, experiences, through tension in the body, the way we carry ourselves, the way we are tensing in certain areas. Like if you, I don't know, got punched in the face or the arm, the muscles, the fascia kind of tense up in those areas. It's kind of like wrinkling up. I don't want to wrinkle this up, but like I have this piece of paper, right, pretty flat, but then I fold it in half and crease it. Now there's this line right there, and even if I flatten it out, you can still kind of see it, and it's it's embedded into the fabric of the paper now, into the shape, into the form of this paper. And so when we go through traumatic experiences and events, those things leave kind of like, metaphorically speaking, wrinkles in our field, in our body, in our filters, in the way that we filter the world, in the way that we see everything. So holding on to this stuff, in holding on to it, we're now carrying it forward, and now it's also feeding in and filtering information, right? Information is just coming in, and now it has to get past the confusion, anxiety, distress, apathy. So now life is simply happening, but now there's all this stuff in the way. There's all this stuff in the way saying we can't really enjoy life because I'm too confused, because I'm too anxious, because I'm too distressed, because I'm too apathetic, which then lends itself to, I think eventually narcissism, but cynicism, pessimism, that kind of thing. There are these things which were at a very young age, and then later on, these became apathy. If I don't know what to do about these emotions, these stressful emotions, if I don't know how to process them, and nobody's helping me, and I have to carry on with this really heavy load at such a young age, well then what's the point? What's the point of living if there's all this shit in the way, preventing me from actually enjoying my life, enjoying safety, stability, play, right? What's the point? That's what apathy asks of us. So Denny's 2, I'm distressed, I'm confused, I'm anxious, I feel unsafe within myself, and I don't know how to communicate that. So we go to Denny's because my dad's like, well, I really want to go, and I already told my friend we're going to meet up there, and he's not a great communicator either. So we go to Denny's, and I'm like, we're at the counter, because we're not in a booth. We're at the counter, and my dad and his friend are talking, and it's my dad, then his friend, and then me, like left out of the conversation. And it was very strange, because it's like, why would my dad sit on the other side of this person? It felt strange. It was weird. But I'm just like there, and I'm definitely not eating. And I'm just kind of like head down, and I feel like this weight and like this darkness, and like it's this, I just want to like hole up and be in a safe little cave within myself. Which I'm realizing just now is why I spent so much time in like like the cabinets under like the sink, or in the bathroom, or like in a closet, or just like hidden away in like essentially womb-like places in the house, because that's where I felt safest. It's alone, me and my little thoughts. So now I'm at Denny's, and this is before apathy has not yet set in. I'm in Denny's, and I'm scared and confused, and I feel ashamed. I'm in like my little ball of shame here. And the moment passes, and then the memory actually ends there, just kind of like fades into darkness. And I don't remember what happened afterwards. But I do remember, like, I just felt like now I'm remembering disorientation, feeling very disoriented. And I really wanted to hit on this because it's a very Mexican style of parenting and of relating to one another. After that moment, after these two events, then came the apathy. And I know this because like my dad would then ask me where I wanted to eat, or what I wanted to do, or like whatever, on and on and on, for so many years after these two events. These two events created an experience, created a wrinkle within my within my field, this is a toroidal field. It's a field of a general awareness. So they created Wrinkles. And I remember seeing this. It's coming back to me. I remember seeing this on a psychedelic trip. Uh, uh, uh. So if you see these little, I don't know what you call them, these little chevrons or these little marks. I remember seeing them on an acid trip. I just remember kind of like, I was kind of just going with it. It was it was a strange trip. But I remember like pulling back into like the deepest part of myself, and I was kind of doing a mixture of like Tai Chi and movement and yoga. I was like stretching and feeling all these crazy things, and then I pulled back and I started seeing these kind of wrinkles, these like in front of me and around me. And I remember the thought being, these are thought forms. And I thought they were in my apartment, and they might be kind of like energetic impressions in the air, in like space time. But I remember like the thought being like, whenever you pass through these things, through these indentations in space time, in the air, that's when a thought is triggered. When your energy passes through them, it's what your thought forms, like if my thought forms are just simply like open and clear, then they're just open and clear and my perception is open. But when I pass through them, it's kind of like passing through a wrinkle in time. Damn, that's a good book. So it's kind of like passing through a wrinkle in time, and that then alters and affects my train of thought, my thought patterns. So the patterns I hold in my field are the patterns of thought that I usually have. And I've done meditation for a long time now, so I know, I'm aware of the general pattern in my thought, like a kaleidoscope. Like a kaleidoscope has specific patterns. It looks kind of like chaotic and crazy, but it's organized chaos, like my thoughts. But a lot of it has to do, like a lot of the day-to-day, my thoughts will go through confusion, anxiety, distress, and it's simply a matter of like reparenting myself through them so those wrinkles smooth out and I can navigate the waves of the day-to-day like a masterful sea captain. Or like a masterful sea captain, as opposed to how I used to, which was like a very novice, terrified surfer. Instead of a full ship and crew, it's just me riding the waves of like a vast ocean on a little surfboard. And even before that, I remember this very apt, succinct vision or visual that I got of being what is it, like a very anxious termite, I think with like an eating disorder, floating on a toothpick in the ocean, trying not to stress eat. Yeah, like an anxious termite on a toothpick in the ocean, trying not to stress eat. Yeah. Psychedelics. Okay, so, oh, right, the Mexican parenting thing that I wanted to hit on was that if you're fat, they call you gordo, which is, the fat person, fat guy. If you're a skinny girl, they call you flaca, just skinny girl. It's like the feminine of skinny person. If you have big teeth, they call you like dentudo. If you have a big head, they call you like trompudo or something. I remember like my cousin will call his brother essentially like big head. or something like that. But it's the way that we combine love and cruelty that really fucks up the psyche. So I like after this, my sense of helplessness and loss of control, or my ability to like penetrate the world and create for myself, takes a really nasty blow. So my answer to whatever my dad would ask is whatever. Like, I have no control over this, and it's going to be very unpleasant and harrowing and unsafe, and I don't know what to do, and you're not really telling me what to do. I don't know. Whatever. Like, whatever. And there was a lot of, there's a lot of unprocessed emotion. Anger has been a huge one. I'll write it down. Anger, which is within the channel or frame of hurt and sadness. Sad. I remember, I think a psychologist once said, depression. What is depression? It is anger turned inward. That definitely hit. But it's a form of hurt. So we can go, when we have hurt, we can go anger, or we can turn against ourselves and go sad. Right, we don't want to weigh on others, so we weigh on ourselves rather than dealing with the weight, processing it. So yeah, my answer to everything was whatever. So he started calling me, instead of like, so this is where the reparenting came in. Instead of being like, hey, how I am to myself now and how I hope to be if I ever have kids, it's like, hey, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing something in you, and it looks like something's weighing on you. It looks like something's got you really down. What's going on? What are you feeling? And when I initially did this, when I was driving, because that's usually when I get these downloads, there was this well of emotion that came up within my inner child. For me, in that moment, it was like looking at my inner child in my mind. So it's not like I felt that well, but like empathetically, I felt like the skin, just like this pressure come up and then turn into tears. And usually that's when somebody would say, hey, don't cry, right? Like, don't feel that way. It's okay. Like, they're trying to say it's okay now, or they're trying to be comforting and consoling, but they're saying, hey, continue to not process what you need to process. So instead, in that moment, I just sat there, put my arm on his shoulder, visually in my head, and just sat with him as he cried and processed. And after that, the words started coming. It was like, I feel confused and anxious and scared and angry. And so instead of being made fun of for this stuff that I don't know how to communicate or verbalize, instead of making fun of me for that, can you sit with me? Can you like help me? Like, I'm new at this. I'm a kid. I'm 5 years old. Can you like, have you like, how do you deal with this shit? And my dad just like kind of like, well, dude, he's done that. He said that. He's like, just put it behind you. Keep going. Just put it behind you. But yeah, I'm like sitting there with my inner child. So what would I have to say? It's like, oh man, yeah, that sounds like a really fucked up situation to be in. Sounds really scary. Sounds unsafe, unstable. Sounds like a confusing time. Right? Because when we sit with something, when I sit with one of my clients and I'm walking them through some of these things that they don't know that they're holding on to, We're kind of discovering it together. So I'm like kind of clearing the path, but I'm clearing the path to the experience, to the emotion. Once they get to the emotion, it is them who has to sit with the emotion, and like an antenna, they have to let the information come in and go through them, right? We have to let the emotion just go through us. It's not about holding on to it. It's not about pushing it away, because when we push it away, we're just putting it off. And eventually some people would rather have a heart attack and die and leave their loved ones unsafe, unstable, rather than sit with their emotion and process it and add years to their life. But that's, my aunt would say, everybody's got their karma. Everybody makes their own choices. It's not good or bad. It's just like everybody's. I don't know if my dad ever said this, but I imagine him saying this a lot. I don't think he ever did, though. Is like, you know what you're doing. At the end of the day, you know what you're doing. If you know you're lying to somebody, the other person may know, they may not know, but you know what you're doing. You know what suffering and what reward you're going after. So if you're manipulating somebody, you know what you're doing. On some level, we all know what we're doing. So I sat there and I reparent myself. I be the dad that I wish I had, that I felt cheated on, that I felt like robbed of in this life. And I be that for myself. I be that for myself. I am that for myself. And so I don't have to, that rock that I was carrying for like 28 years, that was weighing on me, I can just toss that aside. I can use a healing technique like the violet flame. I usually picture like a violet flame, little campfire, bonfire. I just throw that rock in there and the flame breaks it apart, turns into ash, and it just flies away. Now that density, I'm not carrying that. But all this confusion, anxiety, distress, the anger, the hurt, the sadness, until I sit in the feeling, until I sit with it, until I feel it, only when I feel it can I heal it. We got to feel it to heal it. Putting it off just puts it off. Pushing it away, creating boundary. I don't want to feel the hurt. I don't want to feel the hurt. It's creating so much stress and anxiety, and it's perpetuating and keeping us in this state of trauma. So we keep reliving, re-experiencing, recreating the same events that we're trying to avoid. That's why, to me, helping people heal and healing myself is such an important and rewarding thing to do. It's really awesome. It's like, I don't know, it's like the smell of summer, to have hope and have that hope be rewarded. So I had not yet embodied. It's all about getting back to a place within ourselves of safety and stability. Safety and stability. So in those moments, those 2 times at Denny's, inside I felt very unsafe and I felt very unstable. So my nervous system started going haywire. And my body started tensing because I didn't know what to do, and I felt very unsafe and I felt very ashamed. Now, because it's always right now, Now, to clear my field, I make time, I make space to come back to safety, stability within myself. What are the three most universally healing practices that we have as people on earth? Breath, sound, and movement. Breath, sound, and movement. Right? So instead of tensing up and silencing, closing up, bottling up, we make space, we create space, and process what would otherwise hang on to us, cling in certain areas. Like, yeah, if you have a little river and beavers form a dam, well, that water is going to get stuck there. It's going to slow and obstruct the flow. So it's on us to clear out the obstructions, these little indentations. And there are so many awesome ways to do that. Breath, movement, sound, forgiveness, coming back to and embodying certain emotions like unconditional love, like purpose, like joy, pleasure, practicing, sitting with, processing, and feeling in a safe environment, challenging, uncomfortable, or painful sensations and emotions. Kind of one and the same, but different. So if you feel like you would stand to benefit, if there's something that you know you're hanging on to, but you don't really know what it is, definitely hit me up, and we can talk through it together, work through it together, and let go, create a little more spaciousness within our field, within our mind, within our emotions, within our bodies. We can, yeah. iamvictory.com/book an appointment. Like, subscribe, share. It says book. Book. I'm just making it personal. All right, whatever. iamvictory.com/book an appointment. And there are a lot of really great exercises, practices that you can implement in your day to start slowly reintegrating yourself, your child self, that maybe you've been putting off because of all the stuff that you are carrying. It's really just a matter of creating the time and space to process it. I have not yet embodied that me, here and now, is safe and stable. I can tell you firsthand, embodying, feeling, being with other people in relationships where I feel safe and stable lends itself, facilitates really awesome, joyful, playful experiences. So I hope, even if you don't book a session with me, you definitely like just, I don't know, Google it, YouTube it, healing modalities, healing practices. I have a few guided meditations. Yeah. Come back to that safety and that stability within. I'll see you in the next one. We're going to talk about past lives and kind of how that works. Yeah. And at the end of the video, we're going to transmute, change, heal, rework some of these old traumas from past lives. All right, I'll see you then. Till then, take care, be safe. I love you. Peace.